Welcome to another edition of Rubbing is Racing. I'm your host, Mr. CJ Sports. You can follow me at CJ Sports 1. You can follow the 110 Nation at 110 Nation. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Steve Billmeyer. How you doing tonight, Steve?
I'm doing great, CJ. Doing really good. Just coming down from a great race weekend.
Good God. We knew that, like I was saying right before we got on the air, we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when, how, or what to expect, I guess. And we definitely got our money's worth on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, definitely so. And people can say what they want to about NASCAR, but NASCAR couldn't have scripted a better race than what they had yesterday. I mean, they couldn't have come up with that on their own.
No, they couldn't. And it's funny because the same people that were upset with Logano doing what he did and wanted Kenseth to get his payback, it seems like those are the same people that are upset that Kenseth got his payback.
Yeah, it's a strange deal. I mean, and it's a giant argument all day long today on social media, but to me, the bottom line is the things that Joey supposedly did to Matt earlier, there's argument about whether they were intentional or for what reason. And the deal yesterday with Matt, there's no arguments. I mean, you knew it was intentional, so NASCAR's got to do something now about that. They've got to make a stand and got to put on the best face they can and show people they mean business.
Yeah, see, this is where me and you are going to disagree all night long. I don't necessarily have a problem with what I saw on Sunday. I mean, like I talked about and posted, if this would have been back in the day, Dale Sr., this would have been, another racing incident. And I'm a firm believer if this would have been Dale Jr. racing this way, they'd have built a monument for this guy. And you saw the reaction at the track when it happened. Like, that place erupted. I don't think ratings at any point in this season could have been any higher than at that moment. I think all eyes were on NASCAR, and if you were not watching the race and, whatever you was watching, they broke in and let you see what was going on, or later on you caught what was going on, all eyes became focused on NASCAR. I know this maybe not be the way they necessarily wanted it, but for the last 24 to 36 hours at this point, 24 to 26 hours, I guess, because it did run late. All eyes have been on NASCAR, good or bad, and I don't think NASCAR could have got any more attention than what they got from what happened yesterday.
And no, the attention level for NASCAR is going to be great, and I don't know if it's going to be so much of a letdown that now the story's over, there's no anticipation left or anything. I don't know if that's going to dim the fans' enthusiasm or not, but on the popularity scale, it sure boosted Matt Kenseth up a few notches with the fans.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I think in the garage area, deep down in their hearts and in a lot of people's minds, he lowered himself just as much in my eyes as he did raise himself as much in other people's eyes. And yeah, after it's said and done, the fans are all happy and everything, but fan happiness doesn't buy groceries. And what he did was intentional, and I think NASCAR ought to come down on him hard to use him as an example.
Did it on purpose. I don't know if you heard a different post-accident interview than I heard, but I swear he said a tire went down. I mean, did I get the wrong information?
No, not at all. But then again, who thinks his tire really went down as opposed to who thinks he just drove him in the wall? And the drivers know, and that's the only ones who you're worried about getting respect from. And they're probably thinking, maybe like I am, you should have just man up to it instead of trying to cover it up.
Well, I mean, they learned that one from Kevin Harvick the week before. As long as you don't come out and say what you intentionally did, no harm, no foul. So at this point, we watched Kevin Harvick do what he did at Talladega, and we watched Matt Kenseth do what he did at Martinsville. Which one was a little more shady than the other, in your opinion? Since obviously both of them were deliberately done. One was to keep themselves in the chase. The other one was kind of a payback in hopes to keep the other one from advancing into the next round of the chase.
See, I don't look at it like that. I just look at it like which one looks like an accident and which one looks like it was done on intentionally.
Oh, come on, Steve. Both of them look like it was done intentionally. Regardless what we can pull out of Kevin Harvick's camp, and I'm all for what Kevin Harvick did, don't get me wrong, but we all know he intentionally made a right-hand turn going down the straightaway.
Yeah, and, truth be known, I don't have a problem with that, and I really don't have a lot of problem with what Matt did yesterday. I just think he could have done it in a better manner. Instead of just driving him straight on into the wall, he could have hooked him going into a corner and got the same effect. And even if he was real mad, he could have hooked him on the right rear corner, which would turn you head on into the wall. But there's other ways to do it. That was a Days of Thunder move. That was a move Tom Cruise did off pit road and pile drive another car because they did him wrong. And it was pretty much the same thing. So just because Kenseth was out of the running for the chase because of his poor finish, he was going to make sure Logano had just the poor finish. And like I said, I don't have as much problem with the intent as I do the way he did it.
Good old Russ Wheeler. I think the timing was a little bit more shocking than me. I really thought that if Matt Kenseth was going to do it, he was going to do it to ensure that Joey Logano did not win the championship. In other words, I would expect the race before my Homestead, if Joey Logano hadn't locked himself in, do it at that point. Or if he would have locked himself in going into Homestead, he would have took care of him in Homestead to ensure that Logano doesn't win a championship. Because at this point, all Logano's got to do is win one of the next two races, and he's going to Homestead for a championship. And I'm sure that if nothing else, Kenseth will be on probation, and so he will be highly watched. He can't finish the job if Logano is in contention for a championship. Was you surprised that he chose Martinsville to do it, or do you figure short track maybe get away with it a little bit better?
Well, Martinsville's the slowest track on the circuit. It was the slowest track ahead. So it was the perfect track to get a payback for because it was the least likely that you would hurt somebody traveling by speed up there. But then again, Richie Evans died at that racetrack, so there is a danger zone there. But as far as Cup goes, that would be the ideal place because, like I said, it would be the least likely place where you would get hurt. It wouldn't be a deal like when Carl Edwards got a payback on Brad Keselowski at Atlanta and put him on his roof. That was a little bit too strong a payback, but basically the same message was sent. So I kind of anticipated there first, and if he didn't get him there, Phoenix was going to be his other shot. I know Kyle Busch took Ron Hornaday out at Texas, but Texas is a pretty high-speed track. You don't want to mess with somebody on a high-speed track and take a chance on hurting them.
I don't know. I agree, and you start playing with a really even more of a fine line when you start retaliating on the bigger tracks and the faster tracks. I would have thought that Matt Kenseth would have made sure that when he did it, it counted, that he made sure that Joey Logano was not going to be the 2015 champion. And, essentially, yes, he's made the path, a lot harder for Logano at this point. And maybe that's his view of fairness because Logano didn't take him out of the final race. He took him out of one of the races earlier in that round, so Kenta still had an opportunity to drive his way back in. But me, if that was me, I would have waited. I would have found my way to take an opportunity at either the race before Homestead or Homestead, and to ensure that Logano was not going to win the championship. And that's just me. I don't know.
It's just, I don't think there's a driver that would want to try to intentionally take a driver out at, say, at Homestead, where it's a pretty high-speed track, and so is Texas. And do you really want to take that chance on hurting a fellow competitor, a guy you see in the garage area at every race? Or even worse, do you want to take a chance on something happening like the Kyle Larson incident a couple of years ago at Daytona, where a car goes up into the fence and possibly goes through the fence and hurts spectators? I'm sure there's a lot of drivers that sit up at night thinking about that. At the same time, they're thinking about how they're going to get a payback for what happened to them and everything. And I think that went through Matt's mind, and I think that's the biggest reason he chose to do it at Martinsville. Was it would just be less collateral damage there than anywhere else. And plus, it also gives, if that doesn't work, it gives him one more shot at Phoenix. So, yeah, it was a pretty well planned deal, I'd say.
Now, in your best guesstimate with NASCAR, and we know they've not been the most consistent of governing bodies in the world, and we know that they've also dropped the ball, and then they've surprised us and been really strict at times. In all your years' experience of being around NASCAR and being involved with NASCAR, if you had to take a guess, what do you think is going to be said tomorrow? Is there going to be any kind of fine, suspension, probation, anything at all? Or are they going to chalk it up as, I would have done the same thing, or boys be boys? Or how do you think NASCAR is going to move forward with this?
This is probably the most important question NASCAR has faced since I've been in the sport, since the early 80s. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a defining moment for NASCAR. They've either got to make a statement to prove that stock car racing is legitimate or stock car racing is a circus. They've got to answer that question tomorrow, on Tuesday, when they issue penalties. And I think, in my opinion, the thing to do would be suspend Kenseth for the rest of the season, and definitely take him out of the chase, fine him and his car owner and his crew chief a significant amount of money, put them both on probation for 2016 for the complete year, the driver and the crew chief and the car owner, Joe Gibbs Racing, and just really slam them with this and tell people, hey, we're going to draw the line right here. And this is NASCAR's golden opportunity to change their image with their fans, to go from being such a cluster bomb, so to speak, to really being a substantial and really be a professional sport, set that kind of image out. And this tomorrow is going to be either a great day or a bad day for NASCAR.
Now, this brings me to a question. I know a lot of people weren't thinking about this when they were levying and everything else. And before I say this, it's funny because 1 year ago today is when Kevin Harvick came up behind Jeff Gordon and pushed him and caused the whole big to-do with him and Keselowski. It's on my timeline as sharing from last year. So I thought this was funny that we're kind of just sitting in the same boat, different track, but same boat that we were yesterday, or as we were last year with all the controversy and everything going on. But I've seen this quite a few times, and to extend on that, if you feel that he should be suspended for the rest of the season, just even that part, what should NASCAR then do with Danica Patrick, who did the same thing? Obviously, it was not to a chase contender, but she tried to retaliate on the track to David Gillian, and so I find this interesting because yes, if they go forth and do any kind of penalty to Matt Kenseth, then in all fairness, they would have to do the same to Danica. And now you're talking about suspending two drivers that bring a lot to offer to this sport, especially fan base, sponsorship, and everything else. Does NASCAR, if they do one, do they do the other? Do they treat it the same level since Kenseth was taking out a chase contender and the race leader versus Danica trying to take out, which ended up taking herself out, but trying to take out someone that was pretty much back there in the back of the field with her? How does NASCAR move forward with that then?
Well played, CJ. I was waiting to mention that because I don't think very many people have noticed it, and nobody has commented about the fact that Danica did the same thing to David Gillian earlier in the race. I mean, and nobody's saying anything about that, and I'm wondering why. Is it because the implications were different? You know, it wasn't going to matter taking David Gillian out. He was already out of the chase, so there's no big deal there. But, yeah, if you're NASCAR, as hard to believe as it is, you've got to take the same stance against Danica as you do against Matt. The thing is, the intent was the same, and that's what broke the rule. The aftermath, the outcome, doesn't affect that part of the decision. The decision is, was the intent there? And it was obvious it was. So, you know, they both need to be treated the same, and not like they did earlier in the year with Jennifer Jo Cobb and I forgot who else, and find him heavier than her because he was a well-funded team and she wasn't, and yada, yada, yada. You know, they got to be across the board.
How interesting this is all shaping up to be with 3 races left in this season. You know, the possibilities of seeing, because I don't know what NASCAR is going to do. I know that they are really sitting on a very fine fence here. You sit on it too long, you're screwed. If you go one way, then now you kind of look back to, okay, then why didn't Joey Logano get penalized for what he did? It was, intent. Yes, he gave it a little bit of time. It wasn't as intentional. But, yes, there's no doubt in everybody's mind that Logano went ahead and caused Kenseth to get out of the way. I don't know if he necessarily meant for him to wreck, but there's no doubt that he pushed him out of the way. And then the whole Kevin Harvick incident and what he intentionally did, regardless, I want to believe it was all accidental, but there's no doubt in my mind that there was intent behind it. So you got that side, and then you got the other side. Okay, if they do something, and now you got Danica. That's now you got to do one as you do the other, and now at this point, I kind of feel bad for NASCAR, and it's not too often you get to say this. And I know they kind of brought this on to themselves, kind of letting things go and say boys be boys, and trying to duplicate the product they put on last year. And I know that's what a lot of why they've let things go, is they knew the ratings, the sold out races as the chase went on, because the excitement and the interaction that was going on between the drivers and everything else last year. So I know that they've kind of been letting things go to try to build that same storyline. But I would not want to be in any of their shoes when decisions got to be handed out, because either way you go, you're kind of taking a step backwards no matter which way you go.
I think the only thing we've agreed on tonight is the phone number to call in on. You were saying earlier that you felt bad for NASCAR, and I'm sitting here thinking NASCAR is sitting on a gold mine, baby. They are going to reap this. They're going to milk this for everything they can get. I tell you what I would do if I was NASCAR. I would come out 2 o'clock or so tomorrow afternoon with a press conference and say, after further review, we need further review. We'll let y'all know tomorrow, and walk off. And let the publicity rise from that. It's not going to hurt the race teams any. Maybe cost the truck drivers a few hours sleep to haul the car at a later date, but no big deal for a truck driver. It's not going to affect the teams or anything else. So why not draw the drama out a day longer? Why not build the press up a day longer? I mean, NASCAR can get a lot out of this, you know, if they choose to go that way, and that's the way I would go with it. But I would, at the same time, when Wednesday rolled around and it got time to make a statement, I would make one that left no doubt in anyone's mind as what our future intent was going to be. And that's the biggest part of it. It's one thing to stand up there and say, yeah, we're going to draw the line here, and yeah, we're going to suspend you or fine you or whatever this much for doing this the next time it occurs. But you've got to do what you say you're going to do. You've got to do that the next time it occurs. And actually, yesterday it was the second time it occurred because Danica did it first. And you've got to, you just can't do one without doing the other. That doesn't make you look strong. That makes you look weak.
Now, how funny would it be if NASCAR walked up to the podium and said, you know what, we're going to flip the quarter. We're going to let the quarter decide on what we're going to do. Heads he suspended, tails we lit, boys be boys. That would really mix things up. But yeah, that would be definitely interesting if they prolonged it another day. What do you think the probability, what the odds are that they're not going to do anything at all? Do you think there's any chance at all, 10% chance or anything, or do you think it's pretty much locked that NASCAR is going to do something one way or another? Well, do something to Matt Kenseth, if it be probation, suspension, points, fine, something.
I think NASCAR's intent all the way through the chase has been not to influence the outcome of the chase. If somebody does something wrong, an incorrect restart or something like that, how do you jump in and penalize them enough that it will make a difference, but enough to where it might cost them the championship? And have to live down that bad publicity. I mean, I realize it is publicity, but people are really going to associate you with professional wrestling if you don't make constant stances on items that you really can't argue. And that's the situation they've got from yesterday. I mean, there's just no way you can argue. It couldn't be more cut and dried as to what Matt Kenseth's intent was yesterday. And you can holler right front tire down or whatever you want to, but it was obvious. And you could, really, the angle they've shown mostly, you can see the right front tire sometime, and it doesn't look flat to me. So.
No. That was one of the things I've started paying attention to since I heard them say something about a left front tire being down, was whether or not, me personally, I wouldn't have said left front tire. With all the damage he had up front, just got done beating and banging with Brad Keselowski and had his car looking the way he did, I would have just said something must have broken. I couldn't turn. And that's what I'd have left it at. I wouldn't have said tire, because tire you could pretty much see whether or not, with all the cameras out there, if something internally malfunctioned, then you kind of leave that open for, well, it could have conversation. Knowing we know, what the odds are, but it still could have been left as, well, maybe it's a possibility. Speaking of which, do you blame Matt Kenseth? I mean, you got bumped out of a race you was leading, and, it essentially made it almost impossible for you to make the chase. And then here you are at the beginning of this race, and you're up towards the front, and you get ran over by his teammate, Brad Keselowski. And on top of that, do you think what was going on between Kenseth and Keselowski, was that intentional? I would like to think that Keselowski is not that stupid and wouldn't put his car in harm's way, which ended up happening. but it did seem to go a little extensive before they finally just said, well, whatever, and slammed into each other, bringing Kurt Busch into it.
Yeah, I don't think Brad would risk his shot at the championship for a payback. I mean, that's not really intelligent to me. He could just say, well, I'll leave it to Joey, and even have an agreement with Joey, since, Joey looked like he was going to be in there and everything. Just say, maybe you ought to take the lead on this payback deal instead of me. But I don't blame Matt Kenseth a bit. I understand how he feels and everything. If anything, I blame social media, because they have really goaded him into doing something. Everything I've seen about it, asking the question before if there was going to be a payback, I think 90% of the people felt like the comment, he's too nice a guy. And other people that said he doesn't have the stones to do it either, that he's too meek. And I kind of, I thought about that, and then I thought about Charlotte last year in the Chase race, where he ran down between the trailers and tackled Brad Keselowski. He was so mad. I'm like, this dude's got a temper, and y'all are just pushing his buttons, saying he doesn't have the balls to do this, or he's too nice a guy to do this. And I think social media has as much to do with him doing what he did yesterday as anything else. But bottom line, I don't blame him a bit. I understand why he would do it. And that's one reason I never wanted to be a race car driver, is because I had too much payback in me. The very first race I'd have raced in a go-kart, if somebody rubbed me, I would have forgot about winning the race. All I'd wanted was payback. So I realized kind of early on that's not the temperament to have as a driver.
Early on in that race, we got to see some fast cars out there, and the first part of the race was very enjoyable. Not that part wasn't enjoyable. I was cheering just as loud as probably the whole stands. I was more like, wow. And then, of course, I sent you that message, and since we're on the radio, I got to keep it clean, but I was holy beep. And so, it was, Logano had a very fast car. Keselowski, Kurt Busch, leading the way, and I believe Kenseth was up there as well. I don't know if he led any laps, but the race started off, and we saw a lot of dominant cars, and as the race went on, we kind of got an idea. I think at one point they made a comment the top 12 cars all consisted of top 16, the guys that made it into the chase. And, it made a point, talking about the fact that that's why they were in the chase, which, I absolutely agree. There's a lot of races, if you paid attention, especially in the chase, the top 10, top 12, top so many cars mainly consist of, or did only consist of, chase cars. I definitely think that there was nobody that got snubbed. I think all the drivers in the chase were the ones that belonged in the chase, and we got to see that throughout the chase by who was running up front on a consistent basis throughout this chase.
Yeah, definitely the cream rises to the top. I mean, the top teams are going to be the guys that are in the chase, and the top teams are going to be the guys that dominate the chase races, and I think so far it's proved that point. I mean, I don't see where it's going to be a big change in things over the next three races. You might have a different winner, but it would be because some of the chasers fell out or had problems. I mean, you got to face it, they're the best of the best, so that's what you would expect to have up front. That's what you'd expect to be on the top.
Oh, most definitely. Another driver had a great day was Martin Truex. I find myself trying to pull for him more and more often. Is just want to see that little engine that could. I'd love to see a single car team from Denver be able to finally, bring it home and them win a championship. Especially how far they've come over the last, I would say, even handful of years. It wasn't a team we really talked about. If I'm not mistaken, Regan Smith was in it. and I believe he found victory lane one time with them. And it seems like every year since then, when they added Kurt Busch and then of course Martin Truex, it just seems that I don't know what's clicked, but it seems like every year they've improved, even with the change of drivers. And it would be great to finally see them in victory lane. Another guy that impressed me, and I know this is like I'm probably going to burn as soon as I say this, but it didn't get there wasn't a lot of talk about, and that's Dale Jr. And got to the end of the race, and all of a sudden I found him up front. And honestly, I think if that race had another good, 25, 30 laps or so, Wade Jr. had ran down first and second, I think there's a good possibility that Jr. could have won that race.
Yeah, he might have. I was just thinking back, and you're right, he did come up through the field and work his way up. So, in all likelihood, he had a strong enough car to take the top two spots and go ahead and win that race. I mean, he kind of he raced smart to be able to work his way up through the traffic the way he did during the race. And it was strange comparing yesterday to the truck race on Saturday, because it seemed like there was a lot more contact in the Cup race than it was in the truck race, and I would have expected it to have been the other way around. I mean, the thing that impressed me in the truck race was Timothy Peters went to the back twice and worked his way back to the front during the race through traffic. And I thought, well, that might be the key to winning on Sunday, is being able to take a chance on a pit stop or something and get out of sequence and get starts from the back and still be able to be competitive at the end of the race and not knock defenders off your car. And it didn't quite work out that way yesterday. I mean, it was tough going back up through the traffic. So for Junior to do it and there at the end of the race and to have a car that could do it was pretty impressive. On top of being a previous winner of the previous race, it looks like him and his team has got at least Martinsville figured out pretty good.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I was surprised to see him up front, and he closed the gap, because if I'm not mistaken, it was a pretty big gap back to where he was at, and he closed up on him. And I honestly believe, and this is the part where I'm gonna probably burn, but 25, 30 laps, I think he could have got by him. He looked very strong, and the rest of those guys up front didn't look strong. We got what was left of the product that was left. Once you took out Keselowski, once you took out Logano, once you took out Kurt Busch, you kind of took the actual fast cars out of the race, and you kind of just gave us that just gave us the rest of the cars that were running decent, but nobody was really running exceptionally fast compared to everybody else. Jamie Mack had a very impressive race. I was really hoping that he could pull it out and be victorious on that green-white checker flag, but being on the outside, it was something that wasn't going to happen. And I think at that point Gordon had the fastest car, maybe outside of Junior. But Jamie Mack definitely got to tip his hat. Also, their spotter, Lauren Rayner, is leaving. He's been Jamie Mack's sponsor for 10 years. I saw that on Facebook earlier today. We've had him on a show a couple times. Great guy. I know that's got to be tough to have someone in your ear every week for 10 years, and now you already know going into the next season you're going to have to learn and adjust and get familiar with someone else. I can only imagine how much of a change that is.
It's a big change. I mean, you develop as much chemistry with your spotter as with you do your crew chief. I mean, this is somebody that can truly step up and help you win a race at the moment you need it. I mean, they're pretty much everybody else has got a radio on too, but they can't make that decision, or they'd be a crew chief or a spotter if they could. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be, I wouldn't say a devastating blow, but it's going to be a hard blow to absorb. I think they should have changed spotters now. They should have changed them as soon as they found out from Lauren. With no disrespect to Lauren, but they need to go ahead and start getting that spotter, crew chief, driver triangle going again and trusting each other and being able to work with each other. So you couldn't do it sooner. I mean, if they win the championship, I'd still give Lauren a cut of the money and a ring and everything else, but I would go ahead and use the available time to start training a new spotter and start building that chemistry.
Oh yeah, most definitely. God, it was someone else I was going to throw out there. We're going, AJ Allmendinger. I know before they had the cautions and brought him back together, I know that he had a nice little lead over Gordon and over the rest of the field. Do you think there's any way possible AJ could have held on to the lead he had before they all got bunched up, or do you think he was just sitting duck and those guys eventually would have caught up with him?
No, I don't think he's a sitting duck at all. I think it's becoming apparent, something that Roger Penske realized a few years back, that A.J. Allmendinger's a driver. The boy knows how to drive race cars, and I mean, he did not exceptionally well, but he did very well driving Indy cars for Penske. He won a race for Penske on a road course in the Xfinity Series. And the guy showed flashes of brilliance in the 47 car. I think the majority of his problems are more equipment problems than they are problems of the dinger. I mean, I think if he was in a better car, I think if he was in a Penske car that Brad or Joey had, he'd be just as strong. I mean, the guy can drive. He just hadn't had the brakes to be able to show it yet.
I tell you what, looking at this top 20, let's go 24. This is the kind of results I would have expected from maybe Talladega, where we experienced one or two big ones. I'm not even going to knock A.J. Allmendinger. He's got some wins underneath his belt and everything else. That you got 11th place finish, but you got Justin Allgaier 13th. We got Cole Witt 20th, Landon Castle 21st, Alex Bowman 22nd, Michael Annett 23rd, and David Gillian 24th. Names that we don't even commonly see in the top 20s, let alone the top 25. So I thought that was funny seeing these names up here that we just don't traditionally see up front. Usually if we do get to see them up front, it's got to do with one of the super speedways, and we've experienced one or two big ones.
Yeah, you look at the results from yesterday, and a short track has become just as big a wild card as a super speedway has become. You really don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen or who it's going to involve, but it can happen in a second and take you right out of a race before you can blink your eyes.
Now, I'm a Danica fan, and I'm a firm believer a lot of her incidents are not to her doing. She gets involved with a lot of people's stuff, or she gets, tagged by somebody else. Now, I'm not defending her and saying that she's not caused her own wrecks, but most of the time I feel that they're not her doing. She just gets involved with other people. With that being said, and knowing that she has caused her fair share of accidents, why does it seem that every time she retaliates, it's all of a sudden she acts like she don't know how to wreck somebody? Because she is like the worst retaliator I've ever seen. It's like she takes out her own car every time she tries to retaliate. For someone that has caused her fair shares of wrecks, I thought she would be an expert at this and not have a problem or an issue with retaliating.
They need to set up a test session somewhere and just teach her how to retaliate against somebody. But she just gets so blind angry and so determined on one thing. It's like having blinders on. She can't see anything else. All she can do is, one thing about it, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So that woman's got a temper. And you can imagine how it goes when they're home and he starts an argument and starts losing. I mean, she probably just beats him to death at home. So my hat's off to you, Stenhouse.
I don't know. I I look at it more. She's probably the one that brings in the more money, and having the opportunity to sit there and watch her do all the yoga positions, we get the privilege to see on video or on pictures.
Oh yeah.
I think it would be more like you can, yes, ma'am, you won this argument. You can win every argument because you are the breadwinner, and I get firsthand experience on these yoga positions. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm telling you, she is a tough customer, and she's always has been.
Yeah.
And, I've seen her, she's going after most anybody that's made her mad, but I just think she doesn't get mad in a race car. She just gets a blind rage. And I think she loses sight of everything except the car that she felt like did her wrong. And I think she just has trouble with that takeout maneuver for some reason. I don't know why, but I've seen cops on the show Cops take them out and not crash as hard as she has. So I'm just at a loss as to how to explain that.
I have never gotten it. It just makes no sense to me that someone that is accidentally, purposely, whatever she has done, a little roughness, it has caused the wreck she has caused, but when she is ready to retaliate, she acts like she has no idea how to wreck somebody, and I just shake my head every time. Like, it can't be that difficult. It can't be. I mean, we watched Kenza do it first shot, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We watched Logano a couple weeks ago do what he did, and I mean, yeah, I don't get it. Now, the inevitable just happened this weekend, and, I once upon a time, I was a Gordon fan. Back in the days of the Busch Grand National, growing up, the first handful of years he was in the sports, yes, I picked a driver that I really liked, and then winning all the time just ruined it for me. I'm sorry, but winning 11 races in a season, you win almost a third of the season. I get bored with that. There's only one team or one anything out there that I can watch win every week, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think that's just the fact that college football is got the least amount of schedule. They play like 12 games in a bowl game, and now with the new playoffs, 12 games and two playoff game and a bowl game. So it's not in my face so much versus the NFL. You're looking at 20 games if they win all the time. The NBA, you're looking at 81 games. Baseball, 162 games. Hockey, 82 games. And NASCAR, 36 races. And this farewell tour, I'm just for the love of God, I'm just ready for this all to be over with. I am tired that everything has got to revolve around Jeff Gordon. There's 42 other drivers out there that have very important things and stuff going on that I would rather hear about at this point than have to listen to another final disc for Jeff Gordon, another final qualifying effort at Martinsville Speedway. I'm tired. Oh my God, I'm just ready for it to end. And I was honestly hoping that at some point he'd be eliminated out of this daggone chase so we can at least get this Drive for 5 conversation out of the way and him winning the championship in his last year, this whole conversation out. And as much as he's 23 years on the sport and as much as he's done for the sport, I'm just ready for it to be all over with. And I was hoping that going to Homestead myself, I would not have to experience all this talk for 2 days because I will be down there for the Xfinity Series race as well as the Sprint Cup race. And this is probably the only part that actually pisses me off about what Matt Kenseth did, he eliminated the cars that was going to beat Jeff Gordon. And so now you have Jeff Gordon winning his 93rd race of his career, and he's going to at least have an opportunity at Homestead to win the championship. And I definitely do not get what I wanted out of this whole chase to happen at all. For you that's been around the sport for a long time and has really had an opportunity to see this guy grow up and be the race car driver he has, and seeing how influential and how big and important he has become to this sport. How big was it to see him win, and how big is it for NASCAR to have him having an opportunity to be eligible to win a championship this year at Homestead?
It's a win-win for everybody involved, really. I mean, for NASCAR, it's another great publicity deal, just like the Kansas Logano deal. It's going to be something that's going to be talked about and hyped and everything. I think it was a bit over the top yesterday. I mean, yeah, it's great that he's going to Homestead with a chance for the championship, but you needed that kind of celebration if he retired as the champion, not just making it. I mean, just making it there is part of it and a big part of it, but, you know, it don't pay nearly as much to be the fourth place finisher as it does to be the first place finisher, so that's kind of what you'd celebrate. And I just think it was way over the top yesterday. They should have, you know, said, hey, great, do a little dance and everything, and then let's go on home. Let's get off television. But it was great for the 2014. It's great for Jeff. The pressure's off them now. They're going. They know it. They can relax. They've got 2 weeks to prepare for Homestead. So it's, you know, it's a great deal for them, but it would have been a great deal for anybody that won yesterday, not just because it was Jeff Gordon and the situation and everything. So it's you couldn't ask for a better day from NASCAR. I mean, they've given folks plenty of stuff to think about and talk about and even plan around from what happened yesterday. So this is definitely going to bring the Gordon fans out of the woodwork, and I'm sure there's a few of them that have been online all day searching for tickets for the Homestead race. So, like I said, it's a win-win for everybody.
I was reading this, as Junior said, that I ain't going to argue with what Matt did. Matt felt like he was justified with how he wrecked Joey wrecked, and I don't know, just reading that. Speaking of Joey, we saw, and I ended up being right. I felt that, well, I'm not going to say I was right. Joey did what I said I would have done if I was in the 22 camp and and ultimately won all three races the last round and eliminated some of the competition and didn't lay back. Didn't really play second fiddle to his team. Yes, his team advanced on, and I think, honestly, if it came down to Talladega and, it was either Joey win the race or back off and let Keselowski get in, I think that, yes, he would have backed off. And I want to compliment them, too, for how they handled the restarts at Martinsville with that outside groove not working. I thought that was really good. And show how teammates know when the right time to help each other. And, of course, I'm sure if we had got down to the last 10 laps or something, I bet you all bets would have been off. But I liked how they worked together. So Joey Logano ended up doing what I would have done and, put my foot on everybody's throat and made it hard for them to advance to the next round. I'm not seeing the same thing out of Jeff Gordon in the 24 camp. I'm expecting more of a conservative role and pacing himself, obviously, the age factor and just, preparing themselves and trying to make sure that they are as most prepared as possible going into Homestead since they have not really been that consistent all year round or all year long. Would I be correct in saying that it's probably a good chance that we're going to see the exact opposite from what we saw out of Joey Logano and the 22 team out of Jeff Gordon in this round in the 2014?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more relaxed in the 24 camp than it has been or would be if they hadn't won yesterday. I wonder how much feedback that they'll give Junior to make sure to try to get him in the finals at Homestead. I kind of think Jeff Gordon is just going to be there because he has to be there. It's kind of like a sponsor obligation more than a race to win and get in the chase. So, unless it falls in their lap, I don't see the 24 winning another one before Homestead.
No, I agree. I think that they'll definitely play a more conservative role. And yeah, I agree with the comment on the celebration, a little extreme. You would have thought that they've already locked up a championship. Instead, there's still 3 more races to go. I know it's been a while since Jeff Gordon's been in victory lane, and we're getting down to the final few races and whether or not they were going to have a chance at the championship, and I understand being excited about that. But that celebration went on forever. I know if I'd have been sitting there in that media center, I probably would have left already. I don't think I would have sat around and waited all that time to have an opportunity to listen to Jeff Gordon or ask Jeff Gordon any questions in the media center, because that went on to be extremely long. Speaking about extremely long, the race goes into darkness as that race extended into, I want to say, closer to 5:30 time frame if I remember correctly. I know it was getting late, especially with this weekend being daylight savings, shifting it back an hour. Does NASCAR look into possibly moving the race up a little bit earlier next year, or is it time for Martinsville to step up, put lights at the track, because of especially the race being this late in the year, and that could play into championship factor? It could help determine who, if that race would have been short 20, 25 laps, now we got a whole different outcome, outcome that we would have had if they would have called it, or that red delay, or, that red flag would have took any longer and got them into too far into the darkness and they couldn't race. What does NASCAR need to do at this point? Either enforce lights for Martinsville, especially if they want to be part of the chase and have an impactful part of it, or do they move the race forward? What does NASCAR need to do with that?
They need to take into account the daylight savings time switch, and have the weekend they're going to switch it, have a race set up at a track that has lights. So if it does go long and does go in the darkness, you got something to work with. You can't have Martinsville on the first day that things get an hour shorter. It throws your planning off, and it's like you've seen, you're starting a race at 1 o'clock. It's really starting at 2 o'clock, and, you got to kind of take that into effect. So I would kind of like put Texas in this slot and move Martinsville and Talladega back a couple of races to get tracks with lights up there around this time of the year. I don't know. I don't think Martinsville would work at night. Not so much the race, but the crowd. The area outside of the track is very unlevel, very up and down, got a pond down there. It's kind of hard to maneuver and drive around in, and I don't know if...
And it's very dark.
Yeah, and if the state of Virginia would, want that many people out on the road after dark, as opposed to having them on during the daylight hours, which didn't really happen yesterday.
No, and when I say fans, listeners out there, when I say it's very dark, it is very dark. I went to Martinsville last year, and of course I stayed and listened to Dale Jr. Give his post-race interview after winning the race, and by far probably the best post-race interview I ever got to be part of. It was just funny, and it was a good time in the media center. But it was well dark by the time I got out to my car, and just trying to walk to my car, like there is no lights out there at all. Like it is so pitch black. I'm walking around with my phone, trying to hold it up and pushing the unlock button, trying to find a car to lights start to blink so I can even figure out where the car is even at or where I'm even at, because it was so pitch black out there. So it gets dark there quick, and once it gets dark, it is very hard to see out there. And you're right, the land is not level out there. I was walking, I think, diagonally. Like, I think the hill was going up and down my left to right, and so I'm kind of like walking at an angle trying to cut through everything. So, yes, it was very hilly and very dark out there when I went to go leave. Talk about the chase real quick, the standings, and then we got Texas next week. Obviously, Gordon locks up a spot into the chase. We got Kyle Busch second, Martin Truex third, Kevin Harvick fourth. I mean, to be honest with you, maybe outside of one of the Penske's guys being in there, not a bad top four, and really not that big of a surprise, the top four. I know that everybody had Keselowski and Joey Logano, or at both, one of those scenarios to play out that they would be in a chase. But honestly, if those four right there make it, I don't think anybody would really cry. Kyle Busch being one of the most dominant cars when he returned. with 4 wins. Kevin Harvick having the season, 25 top 10s, 3 wins. Martin Truex doing something with the one-car team with the win, 21 top 10s. Top 10s is like third on the top 10 cars there. And then, of course, Jeff Gordon just being consistent, 18 top 10s and a win now as well. I don't think that anybody would complain if that was our Final Four. You got Carl Edwards 3 points behind. Keselowski, not 3 points behind, but 7 points out of 4th place. You've got Brad Keselowski, 24 points out of 4th place. You've got Kurt Busch, 26 points out, and Logano, 28 points out. More specifically, I guess those bottom 3 that are sitting 24 to 28 points out of 4th, are they at a must-win situation already, or is there a possibility 24 points out, they can still race their way in? And how difficult would it be if they do race their way in?
Well, it's going to be beyond tough to come in without a victory from one of the back half of the chase numbers left, the back 4. I mean, it's just no way. If I was going to bet my money, I would bet on Logano being in Homestead, fighting for the championship. Even after even more after what happened yesterday, that's just going to pump up the adrenaline, pump up the drive, and Joey Logano, which is going to pass off from him through the whole crew. I mean, they are going to be ultra determined not to be denied that championship. So I would bet the farm on Joey Logano being in there beside Jeff Gordon. And the only other 2 I could see in there with him would be the 2 best drivers, the defending champion Harvick and Kyle Busch, that won 4 times during the regular season after missing 11 races. That speaks kind of highly for him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who I'd look for in the end. And hard to say who come out on top.
I'm assuming it's safe to say if Joey Logano does not make it out of this round, we are not going to see all the petitions for getting Joey Logano put in the championship race that we saw with Dale Jr. when he did not make the cut.
Yeah, I've been kind of wondering if he doesn't make it, if there's going to be a petition that he should be in the championship and everything. I mean, it's a no-win situation for a lot of people, pretty much everybody except NASCAR. I mean, they're the ones that's going to reap the benefits of this.
Now, does this keep the chase being a go situation? I know a lot of people are kind of still up in the air whether or not they want the old chase formats, whether or not they want the old format. I'm sorry, but ever since this new chases came about, I'm sorry, but these last 10 races have been probably the most exciting 10 races at the end of the year than I've seen in a very long time. And I do not want this format to go. I know I'm not in a popular group, but, I mean, the last 2 years, there's been the fights, there's been the on-the-track action, there's the nail-biting and getting into the next round. I'm sorry, but this, to me, has made it feel like a truly playoff and like we're going to a championship. And do you think that NASCAR is going to continue the path they're going, or do you think there's going to be modifications? I mean, what we're seeing so far this year to duplicate last year, do you like what you're seeing, what this product is causing?
I like what I've seen the past 2 years. I think it's the best it's been. You had situations before where the championship was decided before the end of the year, and the races following the decision were just the honors. I mean, there was nothing happening. The crowd wasn't interested. You know, the season's pretty much done when the champion is crowned. So anything after that is nothing important, and it shows in the ratings. It's like the Pro Bowl in football. I mean, it's done after the championship, and it's kind of like, you know, well, who cares? So I don't see NASCAR making any changes. I've said that before, but everything they've done so far has been good, and, you know, you can knock it all you want to, but both years, the last 2 years, it's been a case of excitement building and building and building till the final event, and that's all you can ask for.
Texas is next week. What should we expect to see next week? Are the boys going to be boys, or they going to at least play nice this week in routes to the championship race in Homestead?
The boys are going to be chasing that 22 car. Like I said, that's going to be the most determined, the hardest driving, the hardest working team there is going to be the 22 car. And the rest of the guys are going to be secondary. I think a lot's going to depend on what they announce as far as what they do to Matt Kenseth as to how some of the drivers might or might not race. If they're hard on Kenseth and Danica Patrick, then yeah, I might temper my enthusiasm a bit. But if you're a chase driver, especially if you're one of the back four chase drivers, no, it's Katie bar the door. Whatever happens, happens.
Wouldn't it be in NASCAR's, and I'm going to wrap this up with this, wouldn't it be in NASCAR's best interest to, you know what, we'll make a decision once the season ends. That way, it does not ruin everything that has been built up in the first 7 races of this chase. And you got the rest of the next season, okay, say, we're going to suspend you or we're going to dock you points or something. Obviously, you don't want to take them out of the Daytona 500. But, put it in a position where, they get fined or docked, start off in the hole or something. But wouldn't you think it would be in the best interest of NASCAR to say, you know what, we're going to let the chase play out. We're going to, suspend any, talks of penalties or whatever until after the season so they don't ruin the chase because, taking Matt Kenseth out of the chase, even though he's not in the chase, but is obviously having a lot to do with how the outcome of this chase is going to look like. Wouldn't that kind of be a bummer on this whole chase format?
Well, it might be, but the other side of the coin is they don't do anything. What if Kenseth wins Texas, goes to Homestead, wins Homestead? Then how are you going to find him? You going to take the championship away from him?
Well, Kenseth's no longer in it, so he was eliminated the last round. So that's really neither here nor there at this point.
All right, well, substitute Logano. How is NASCAR going to say he didn't have anything to do with it with all the previous incidents and everything? I mean, that would be the biggest drawback to that I could see was if one of the drivers involved won, how could you risk hurting public opinion issuing a correct penalty? There's like professional wrestling, there's too much room for maneuverability there. I think they got to decide something now. Regardless of what happens, you're not taking Matt Kenseth out of the chase by penalizing him at this point, but you're not really helping Joey Logano get back in the chase either, which isn't going to happen if you penalize him now or if you wait till after the chase to penalize him. There's still no satisfaction for the 22 car team. So if it was me, I would just go ahead and get it over with and be ready to fight whatever backlash came.
Tell you what, like I said, and I know this is, people are probably clearing their ears out after the first time I said it. I kind of feel bad for NASCAR, and just for the fact that they got a decision they got to make that has got major repercussions either way they go. Either they penalize or suspend Matt Kenseth with it, and now you got to do the same to Danica, and that's something you really don't want to have to do is pull 2 drivers out at the end of the season. But you obviously you're not with the reaction it's gotten. You can't just let it go at the same time. Then it's kind of a free for all. But then you got the controversy on what was Kevin Harvick and his motive, and then Joey Logano earlier in the season, and whether or not you want to look too hard into whether or not that was a racing incident or not with Brad Keselowski earlier in the race. So there's a lot of things that obviously NASCAR has got to take into consideration when they're doing this whole suspension thing. And I'm sure tomorrow we're all going to be sitting there shaking our head for one reason or another. I'm sure NASCAR is going to do something that is going to get. It's not going to get the reaction that they want all across the board, and of course, it's not going to happen because there's just too many people loyal to too many drivers. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of head scratching, a lot of head shaking, and I'm sure that social media tomorrow is going to light up soon as a decision is handed down.
Oh, most definitely so. They'll all have their tinfoil hats on and be looking for the black helicopters tomorrow, because it's going to be a very suspenseful morning up until, about 2 o'clock when they announce the penalties and stuff. So it'll be good to watch. And as far as NASCAR goes, you got to eat the sweet with the sour. I mean, yeah, you got a bunch of free publicity out of this and the greatness of Gordon winning and everything, but you got to deal with other situations like, what do we do about Danica Patrick compared to what Matt Kenseth did and everything? I mean, there's good sides and bad sides to all of it. And NASCAR's got a lot to do between now and tomorrow to make themselves look professional and look strong over whatever decisions they make.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I definitely got to thank Steve for joining me for another hour of NASCAR Talk. Make sure that you guys tune in at 9 o'clock for the 110 Nation Sports Show. It is on 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as it is every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Tonight we got Patrick Taylor from Line Blower joining us to talk NFL at 10 o'clock. And I'll be starting off talking about J.T. Barrett and his operating the vehicle while impaired, NCAA. Of course, we'll talk some more NASCAR. NBA is underway. Got a lot of things we're going to jump into. Also, don't forget, on Thursdays, you can catch Steve, myself, and Chris Yellow Caution Flag Creighton on Racing with Big Sweat. Steve, do we have any guests lined up for the Thursday night show that kicks off at 9 o'clock?
No, I haven't got any solid responses yet, but I'm still fishing. If anybody listening, if y'all know somebody that you think would be good for my show, message me, send me a message here at 110 Sports, or I have 2 Facebook groups, Racing with Big Sweat and NASCAR and other racing. You can message me there, but we'll have a couple of good ones lined up. Trust me, we have a big pool to draw from in my group, NASCAR and other racing. We have a lot of drivers from the Midwest and from other types of racing available there. So regardless of who we get, it'll be a good show, so tune us in.
Also, you guys, make sure you check out Snafu Seasoning. That is SNAFU seasoning.com. A really good meat rub that helps take care of the Thursday show. Make sure you guys check them out. Help show your support for, since they showed there you go, I'm tongue all touched. Help show your support since they help support us. And go over to snafuseasoning.com, order yourself some meat rub today, and make sure you put that on everything, as I heard that stuff is good on everything.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. I've heard of people putting it on a lot of different stuff. I thought I was strange putting it on bacon, but there's others that beat me.
Well, we're going to call this a night. Steve, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Looking forward to Thursday nights, and I am sure that we'll be catching up over on Facebook at some point tomorrow to give our reactions to what we hear tomorrow from NASCAR.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you Thursday.
Good night.